Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm really excited to show you how to paint this ancient forest. This is inspired by where I live and my husband and I go hiking quite regularly. I'm painting from memory, so it's intuitively and just from how I remember and what the forest and the trails around here look like to me. And hopefully you guys are excited to learn how to paint this. This is step by step, so hit subscribe and join me now to paint this landscape. On a black canvas. This is 60 by 20, and you don't have to buy a black canvas. You can just take any canvas you have and just paint it with any black paint. Wait till it's all dry. So I'm going to go over all the colors and brushes below in the description. There'll be a full list for you, and of course I'll be letting you know what we're using as we're about to use them. So that takes me to my palette. To begin this painting, I've got neon orange, titanium white, light ultramarine blue. Of course, if you don't have these specific shades, use the next closest thing, or any orange, any blue that you have will work just fine. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to use one of my large blending brushes. This is a number 30 Filbert brush. Use any large brush that you have or that you want to use. I've got it just a little bit wet, and I'm going to begin by taking some of my blue and some white. And I'm going to go around in circles. And the reason why I want to create little circles like this is so they get sort of a magical orb type of effect going on there in the background behind the trees. So I'm continuously turning my brush and spinning it around. I'll use a little bit more blue here. And then as we get into here, I'm just going to start scumbling the excess paint out of my brush, the remainder of the paint. So I'm thinking of those trees that are back there. So that's why I'm going in this direction of blending, sliding my brush side to side. I'm going to take more blue this time and overlap here. And I'm going to come in and just slide, creating some background trees. Nothing in a lot of detail here, just the indication, just simple little lines. Different heights and on an angle. By placing your trees on an angle like this, it really creates a dramatic effect and perspective in a painting. All right, so now without washing my brush off, I'm going to take some white and a little bit of my neon orange. Now I'm not worried about the blue and this specific orange mixing together and getting a muddy tone. In fact, what will happen is it'll sort of turn a purpley color because this is a really cool orange that we're using, so I won't get brown. I'm going to start going around, thinking about that sun that we've got here in the center. It'll be a nice, big, round, glowing center. And I'll just sort of come in between here. I'm going to take more orange this time. Without blending too much. See, I'm turning as I'm scumbling that paint out. I'll take some blue. Again, without washing my brush off, and you can see you get sort of a very light lilac-y color. It's really pretty. Back to my orange. Bit of white again. I'll start coming around. I'm going to take more white. Really got to build up a nice bright base here when working on a black canvas in order for this to really show up once it's dry. So you'll notice that I'm gonna go back to this quite a bit throughout the video and the painting process to add more white. What I need to do is wait until it dries a little bit, because now if I if I try to add more or to blend, what's happening is I'm taking the paint off. So that's why you need to let it just sit there and dry for a little bit. Or you can speed up the process if you want by taking a hair dryer, which I often do. But I've got other areas here that I can work on, so I don't need to take my hair dryer. And I'm just going to come around here and add a few little areas, little circles. Turning my brush this way and that way. I'm a bit more generous with my orange. Not every time. Sometimes I'm going to add a little bit more white. Sometimes I'll just have more orange. That way we get different tones and shades, making your painting more interesting and lifelike, because the light's going to be hitting every area differently. Now what I can do right away here is come over top with the remainder of my orange before it dries out. I don't want to thin the paint, so sometimes to keep my paint from drying out, I'll use a bit extra water or a little spray bottle. We'll have a little path in there, so I'm just going to take a little bit of water on my brush just to loosen some of this paint up. And I'll just indicate a little pathway here. This painting's inspired by all the beautiful trails and hikes that my husband and I go on. So I'm leaving the rest of the area here black, so I have a really nice dramatic contrast that will happen when I come over top with my greens and my yellows and I'm going to even incorporate a little bit of phthalo blue into this painting. So while this area in the center is drying, I'm going to start coming in with some phthalo blue. I'll be using some hookers or sap green gold. This is high viscosity from Artist Loft. I'm going to be using a bit of my neon red, and if you don't have neon red, just use any bright red that you have. Say like a scarlet red or crimson red will work. I'm going to be using some cadmium yellow light hue by Liquitex Basics Acrylic, and I'll also be using some bright aqua green by Liquitex Basics Acrylic. Any turquoise you have will do. Okay, so I'm just going to take one of my older mop brushes. It's kind of losing its shape a little bit on the edge there now. I left it in the water too long. And I'm going to do this dry first, and then I'll take a bit of water if I need to blend it around a little bit. So I'll begin with a little bit of turquoise. And I'm just gonna kind of just pick a few spots here and there. There's no right or wrong way to add this. And then what I'm going to do is use the shape of it, push and tap like this to create a little bit of foliage there in the distance. So you can use this brush a few different ways. And I've got 2 or 3 different videos out right now on brush use, top brushes that I like to use, brush strokes, and also blending colors and how to blend acrylics specifically. If I forget for some reason to add the link below for those videos, they're all going to be under my playlist, which is Beginners Acrylic Painting Tutorials. So you'll find lots of great info down there in that playlist. Okay, so just a little bit of turquoise here and there. And now without washing my brush, I'm just going to push and tap with the bottom, pushing. So I'm going to get not the entire end of the brush loaded, just partially, so I can kind of control the amount that I'm putting on. And you can do this with a Filbert brush too, but I'm gonna need to go back to this brush to add some blending like this. So that's why I can use this brush for two different techniques. And then, so what all these colors are doing is just creating some magic back in the distance. It's really important to kind of get out of your comfort zone and try experimenting using a few more colors if you like the way that looks and if you want to use more colors. So this is just advice for people that are a little bit apprehensive and not knowing how to add more colors. And you know, some of you really enjoy color, but you're afraid of adding it and not really sure how to control it. So that's what is easy to do, is just come in with a little bit and experiment. And because acrylic is so forgiving, you can just go over it with another color if you don't really like the way that looks. And sometimes if you catch it in time, you can just take it right off. Okay, so now I'm going to get a little bit of white. And I'll soften some of these areas because I'm working on a black canvas, and just with acrylic in general, it'll dry a little bit darker. Okay, so I think I'm happy with how that looks now, and I'm going to start coming in with my next step. So I'm going to add a few tree trunks, and I'm going to add the path. So I'll be using my burnt sienna, and I'll kind of switch back and forth over from, I've got the neon red here to play around with, phthalo blue, my light ultramarine blue, even a little bit of turquoise. So I'm going to be kind of going around and playing with all these colors. No green just yet, maybe just a bit of that turquoise, but I'm not going to use any of the green or the yellow just yet. Okay, so for my tree trunks, I'm going to use a flat brush. You can use a round brush or a filbert brush. This is just what I'm using right now if we're working on angles. So my trees are going to be on an angle. I find it easier to control by using a flat brush. I'm going to get it wet, and I'm going to go into a little bit of this blue first, and I'm just going to go right back here first where I initially had some of these. I'll put these in again before I add my final glow in the center. So they don't all have to be on an angle, right? You can have some that are straighter. And you can definitely layer. Don't be afraid of layering. Okay, now I'm going to take some of this beautiful burnt sienna. I'll take a bit of my phthalo. Mix the two. And I'll start coming in with some big trees right away. So don't be afraid Just go for it. Sometimes the only way to get through that fear is by just doing it. Don't think about it, just start. It's initially just starting that freaks us out the most, doesn't it? Sometimes all it takes is that first brush stroke. So to make a shadow, I'm going to use a little bit more of my phthalo blue. I'm not even going to blend it up too much, so you can see both colors on there. And maybe I'll just kind of flat like this, not touching too much, not pushing too hard. Except down here, I'm going to push a little bit harder right into the base of the tree and pull out, so we get those old, been here for over, I don't know how many years. Gee, I think one of the trees where we live, one of the oldest ones, and I know there's trees that are way older in other places, but I think it's over 1,000 years old. I could be wrong, which is quite amazing, you know, to comprehend what those trees have seen, how long they've been around. It's, I think, pretty amazing. So I like the way this burnt sienna looks against that phthalo, so I'm just going to scumble the excess paint out of my brush right up into there. I'm going to take more of that phthalo. I just love the way the phthalo looks with the burnt sienna. And go inside. And add some shadows. Okay, so instantly by adding this dark tree here in mostly silhouette, it really starts, the background, that light starts to play on the shadows in the foreground. And this is the part of the painting that gets really exciting for me when I'm at this stage. I love that play on light and shadow. So let's just go for it. We'll add maybe another tree right here. This one's on an angle, going the other way. Makes it fun to add trees, different trees going on different angles. Adds so much life to the forest. I'm going to take just a little bit of water. I've got quite a bit of paint in my brush and still here on the palette that I can loosen up if I just add a bit of water. Okay, and then I'm going to start coming in here. Notice I'm coming in between those blue lines. And that's just where the light's hitting some of them. And then the other ones are just in the distance. Just had to reload my phthalo blue there. Okay, without blending too much. Go right on the top here. Go over that. So it really gives you that feeling that those trees are super tall and they're just right, they're so tall, they're going right off the canvas there. We'll have a big one that's sort of somewhat arched right about here. Be a bit more generous this time and create a bit of texture here. Just by holding my brush kind of flat and lightly dragging. I'm gonna go right back in. Whoops, I grabbed a little bit of that neon red. The blue and the burnt sienna will overpower that. Just for fun, let's start taking some of that red with what's in our brush. And let's see how that changes. So what it does is it'll warm it up. Give it a little bit of extra something. And I like that. So I'm gonna take some more of that red. And I'm gonna go right down. And keep in mind, guys, it's gonna dry darker. I don't wanna overblend because I don't wanna lose that. I want this to sort of just stay on the surface. And this is gonna look really complementary with all the green that we're gonna be adding eventually. So let's take some more of that, this time with the burnt sienna. Again, not over blending. See how I do that? And how it's on the bottom part of my brush. Okay, I'm gonna hold my brush on an angle like this, sort of. Barely touching, lightly dragging. You could do this with a palette knife too. I just prefer using a brush, but you'll get the same effect with a palette knife. And I'm gonna use some right in here too. So this just gives you that texture on the tree trunk of bark. Okay, so I want to have some kind of branch, I think, that just kind of bows out. Maybe it's coming from somewhere on that side. Broken old tree or branch or limb just kind of curving over there. I think I'll drape this with some moss. And we'll have a few more coming in here. I think I'd like to make this one just a little bit bigger actually. I want to make it wider. I'm going to take all these colors again. Phthalo red. Ooh, that makes a beautiful deep violety color. I like that. Take just a little bit more of my burnt sienna. Balance this blue out a little bit. I don't want that just to be too blue against the rest of the tree, otherwise it won't kind of flow together like it should. A little bit of orange and the burnt sienna. Again, not over blending, and see all the paint that I've got on my brush. So I'm going to start from in here. Short little strokes because we're creating that distance. So the path is going off into the distance towards that beautiful evening light. Kind of what I like to call the magic hour. I'm going to take a little bit more of that orange now. Imagine maybe the light is hitting that side of this tree. Maybe just a little there. And then I'm going to come in on the side with that beautiful phthalo blue. I'm not too worried about the base of these trees because this is all going to be ferns in here and green bushes. Could add just a little bit more shadow in here by going over some parts with the blue, just phthalo blue. So while I've got this on here with this brush, I'm going to do the first base of the drippy kind of hanging moss here. So just tapping over the top, some areas over the top, tapping and a light little drag. Depends on how much moss that you want to have on yours. I just think it looks really, helps to give that ancient kind of a forest look. And that's definitely what it looks like that we're walking through whenever we go on our hikes. And I'll add a few little branches in here. You could use a liner brush for this or a round brush, but you definitely don't need to, especially if, you know, it's just going to be sort of lost in the background, but you just want to still have that indication that there's some branches back there. I want to create a little bit more light. I know this is going to dry darker, so I want to have a few areas that have a sunlit glow to them, just a little bit. So I'll mix a bit of white in with my orange, just a little bit of that burnt sienna, and I'll pick a few spots here. So maybe right in here, and then a little bit there. I don't want to blend that out. See how it kind of looks a bit lumpy? I like that. There's always lots of little branches and tree roots and whatnot on the path, and I think that adds some texture anyways to the path just by leaving it like that. Okay, so now I'm going to come in with a Filbert brush. This is a number 8. I'm going to take some white and a little bit of my lemon yellow. Oops, got a loose hair there. A little bit of lemon yellow, or more of a cool yellow, I should say. Okay, I'm going to start creating that circular shape in the center. I'm going to pick up some more white. Just nice and bright. Beautiful white calm light there in the center that gradually goes out into this peachy, yellowy peachy tone. So you can add little bits of it in between the trees, even little, what I like to do sometimes is just pick a few areas. I call these little pockets of light, little areas, little windows through the tree branches where you can see all those little gorgeous pockets of light. So remember, we're going to be coming in with some moss and some branches. So this might look a little bit funny to you, but this is not the final. This is just part way, one stage of the painting. Oftentimes when people are just learning how to paint, they can't get past the mid stage. Parts of the painting that don't look right. It can fool you. Your mind plays tricks on you. The painting will play tricks on you and you'll think that it's wrong, but in all actuality, it's really accurate. You just have to push through and finish the painting, keep going until you're all done, and then you judge it. But even then you should take a little bit, rest your eyes, because your eyes are out of focus when you're painting. We're focusing on not the painting as a whole. We're seeing just parts of it. So that's why it can look a little bit almost abstract to us and it doesn't look right. So my advice is just keep going, push through. Those feelings and what your mind is telling you is wrong, because I'm here to tell you it's right. You just got to keep going. Now I'm going to take more of my light ultramarine blue. I'll take a bit of white with it. And I'm going to cut in front of that light in some areas. Make it look realistic that we've got some trees here in the front. And coming up from the bottom. Sort of crisscrossing all sorts of trees back here in the distance. And just because I've got a lot of this phthalo blue left, kind of have some fun with it. And just start with my Filbert brush, because you can use the Filbert brush to create foliage. Obviously, you guys see me do that quite a bit. Filbert brush is a wonderful brush to have in your set of brushes, so make sure you have a few different sizes. Look at how pretty that looks. So just a bit of phthalo with a white. Not over blending or overthinking anything, just I'm really just led by color and where I think it'll look pretty. And of course, these pastel colors look really good together. You can't go wrong. And I think maybe a little bit up here. Okay, so now I'm going to begin with my ferns, and because I already have this color out here, I'm going to go with this and do my first layer of ferns with my phthalo and my white. Now I'm going to push gently, and I'm going to start by doing a little line like this. I'm going to push and tap on an angle. Get a little bit of water on my brush just to help that come out a bit better. So it's a lot like painting palm leaves. Now you can either push and tap to just get that shape, or you can pull out each little fern leaf like that. We'll do another one there. Just gonna push, tap, and pull. And we could have one that goes up here. And I'm gonna start taking some of my green gold, a little bit of white. I still have that blue in there. I'm gonna let that work itself out so I can get some different tones. And all I'm going to do is just continue along painting a whole bunch of these. And I'll show you how you can use a flat brush to create these as well. So here I've got my little number 8 flat brush. So I'll take my green, white, and blue. And maybe I'll just take the end of my brush and make them smaller and have it kind of curling and twisting up like that. And then just a little line in between. So just layer and layer and layer. So just keep changing up your greens and have fun with it. Your blues, greens. Got this sap green in here too that we can use. I find the quicker I paint them, the better they tend to look and the easier it is for me. But if I stop and think about it, then they tend to look a little bit more forced and unnatural. So it's kind of just a little tip for you guys. Don't be afraid of them getting a little bit messy. It is messy the way they all grow together. It's just one big mess of ferns in the forest. So an easy way to load your brush for this is to just pull and slide. So just cut into that paint, and then you get like a ridge of it on the end of your brush. Sometimes, a lot of the time, the ferns have that, they curl up on the end of them. So you can add that. And you can go over your ferns as much as you want. If you're not happy with them or you want to add a highlight, just take a little bit of white. I'm going to take a little bit of my yellow now and start adding that. And there's going to be some ferns and stuff back here, but that's going to be a little bit more blurry because we're trying to create that distance, right? So try to stay away from making anything too detailed back there. Let's just keep this here, this area here in focus. I think we need some more ferns over on this side. I'm gonna make this one a little bit darker so that it shows up against that light on the path. Where we have that bright highlight on the path, we're gonna have these more in silhouette. See how I overlapped that blue one there? We still have some of that blue peeking through. We can add hints of this light ultramarine blue as well. That'll be really pretty. A little one there. And then some darker ones. Kind of just tucked in down here with some, whatever's left in my brush. I'm going to take some of my sap green, my phthalo. And just build up from there. Okay, so now I'm going to get a little brave. Don't be afraid, guys. We're going to do some scoopy, dramatic limbs that come down, branches that come down. So we're going to go scoop under like that. Load the end of our brush up, burnt sienna, green, and blue. We've got that one there. Do one that comes there. Add a little bit more burnt sienna here, just to deepen it. And I'll add a big one here. Well, a bigger one. Okay, so now I'm going to use a large Filbert brush. This is the number 12. You can use, there's a few different brushes that you can use. Any size Filbert. You can even use a fan brush. And I'm going to start working on the foliage. So I'm going to use most of my sap green, just a little bit of blue there. And I'm going to tap. And a lot of this is that moss-covered, those moss-covered branches. So you can do it really easily and quickly. I'll take a little bit of my burnt sienna, green gold, sap green. I'm running out of blue now, but I don't absolutely need it for every single branch. So you can tap this way, and then you can kind of tap underneath too. You know, what's really nice is loving this green gold with a little bit of that burnt sienna. I'm going to start to be a little bit more generous with my green gold now. And I'm going to push and tap a little bit harder. I'm going to take a bit of yellow, white with my green gold. Get a bunch of it on the end of my brush. And we just start adding little bits of highlights here. We know it's going to dry a bit darker. And we'll just choose a few areas here to add some brighter tones and highlights. So see, if you pull and flick like that, you'll get a nice, little bit more graceful and finer type of that moss hanging. And I'm going to tap it here. And then I'm going to pull and flick up a little bit in between. Overlapping some of those other colors there. And I'm going to come right over here, tap, 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 and then pull and flick. I like that blue that we had there earlier that we added with the phthalo blue and the white, so I want to be mindful of not going over that because I really like that. I'm going to add yellow and white, a little hint of it up here. And I'll just add a little bit in here. Have it just sort of blending into the tree there. Adding just the smallest amount of some sap green. And maybe just some branches that are sort of crisscrossing there in the background. I often see that a lot. I'm sort of just painting from memory right now. And a lot of the trees have that other type of moss. It's kind of just growing up the tree trunk. That's quite beautiful. Just going to give this a little, I like to call it a little dusting. You know when you bake a cake and you just sort of dust a little bit of icing sugar or powdered sugar on it? That's what I'm doing here, just with a little bit of green. Got my Filbert brush again. Take just a little bit of my titanium white, some more of my neon orange. So see how, whoops, I picked up a little bit of green. That's not good. That will change the color up. Not in a good way. So see, it's just so subtle, but makes a big difference. This is dangerous coming in at this stage of the painting around the green moss that I just added because it's still wet. So don't do that, guys. I'm not teaching you a good thing right now. You want to wait till that dries, or just be very, very careful not to accidentally smear any of that green around. Anywhere else that you want to have a little bit of light. So I'm going to take a bit of white now, brighten this up again, or a bit more, I should say. And then I'm going to scumble over this, set that in the distance. I'll take a little bit of my yellow-white mixture. And just add that back in there. Okay, well, I'm going to call this painting done.
So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video today. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a comment below, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye guys!